Good evening. I'm Alicia Menendez, and we begin this hour with conservative Republicans doing something they promised they would never do: pass a temporary stopgap funding patch through the end of September.
On this vote, the yeas are 217, the nays are 213. The bill is passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
That is an about-face for a large swath of the GOP. As you may recall, Republicans spent the majority of the Biden administration demanding individual appropriation bills and calling resolutions such as the one they are putting forward today, quote, failure theater. Here's the thing. Congressional Republicans need to clear all obstacles out of the way so they can make Trump's tax cuts permanent, gut federal funding, and Elon Musk's funding cuts permanent as well. Vice President J.D. Vance told conservative holdouts that they should vote for the short-term CR because Republicans would pass a separate bill that would make all of the cuts that Musk has unleashed on the American people permanent. President Trump spent most of the Monday calling Republican holdouts and urging them to vote yes, which they did, except for Kentucky Republican Thomas Massie. Massie is the only Republican who actually stood firm in his beliefs. His reward for that? A promise from President Trump to primary him in the midterm elections. As for House Democrats, one Democrat, Maine Democrat Jared Golden, joined the Republicans in passing the resolution despite his colleagues' objections.
It's all part of a broader scheme to pass massive tax cuts for billionaire donors, the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected, and then to stick working-class Americans with the bill.
This bill requires the District of Columbia, for instance, to take a $1.1 billion cut, not out of federal funds, out of their own funds that they tax their people. It defunds the police. I wish I had more time to say how bad this bill is. Vote no.
If you feel this is the mandate that you have, you can do that on your own.
The resolution now heads to the U.S. Senate. Let's bring in NBC News senior national political reporter Sahil Kapoor, who is at the Capitol tonight. Sahil, how did Speaker Johnson get this over the finish line?
Hey, Alicia. Well, this was ultimately the work of President Trump and the White House and the massive pressure campaign that they put on Republicans. Trump really wanted this issue of government funding off his plate so he can focus the Congress, focus his Republican allies on passing that multi-trillion-dollar bill that includes a major tax cut, a boost to immigration funding, and will likely include significant cuts to Medicaid as well. There was a pressure campaign that included calls and pleas to Republicans as well as threats. We've seen President Trump posting on social media multiple times over the last few days, trashing Congressman Tom Massie, the Kentucky Republican, the only no vote on the rule to bring this up, as well as the bill itself. Everyone else buckled, all the other Republicans, including, the ultra-conservative members, including the Freedom Caucus members who say they hate continuing resolutions, who pretty much never vote to fund the government. And this comes on the heels of them voting for a $4 trillion debt increase, at least the blueprint that makes way for that, just a few weeks ago. So we are seeing in real time this Republican Party transform in the image of Donald Trump. And this bill, it just passed the House by a vote of 217 to 213. Republicans had enough votes on their own to pass it and didn't even need a single Democratic vote, although they did get one. It goes to the Senate now, where it's a bit of a different landscape. They do need some Democrats to pass it. Republicans control 53 votes. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky is a hard no, so they will need at least 8 Senate Democrats. And look, Democrats had a long lunch meeting of about 2 hours earlier today, and they emerged without a consensus. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer did not take a position on the House bill. That tells me that Democrats are divided, and there might just be enough to get the 8 votes they need to pass this bill, send it over to President Trump, and leave at the end of this week for recess. I know it sounds ridiculous, Alicia, but getting out of town for recess is a real motivator for members of Congress to get stuff done quickly.
It does indeed sound ridiculous, especially in times like these. NBC's Sahil Kapoor, thank you. Let's bring in our panel. Catherine Rampell, Washington Post columnist and newly announced co-host of the evening edition of The Weekend on MSNBC. Eugene Daniels, MSNBC senior Washington correspondent and soon-to-be co-host of the morning edition of The Weekend, and MSNBC political analyst Tim O'Brien. senior executive editor of Bloomberg Opinion. It is good to see you all. I get Sahil's point about the fact that Trump wants this off his plate because he wants to go focus on tax cuts and more money for his mass deportation plan and all that. But I think it is important to take a beat and talk about what it is that they just advanced. Yes, it reduces spending by about $7 billion from 2024 levels, but it cuts $13 billion in non-defense discretionary spending across the federal departments. What's this actually going to mean for Americans?
Another line item in there is they're cutting $20 billion out of the IRS. So in addition to pursuing a tax cut, they're gutting the agency that collects taxes. And the net result of that is lower revenue for a federal government that delivers services to the United States and to average citizens who are dependent on such things as Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. So it's an ongoing gutting of the machinery of the federal government. And most of what Musk and Doge and other members of the Trump administration have been doing so far is performative. They're laying off workers who contribute less than 2% to federal spending, while crippling the ability of the federal government to do its job. And I think this is going to go into hyperdrive in the fall because you'll get a tax cut, you'll get appropriations for immigration, you get appropriations for defense, and cuts everywhere else. So Americans are going to have to confront the reality that this isn't just a campaign speech, it's a reordering of the federal government in a way that's going to affect their lives in very direct ways.